you know the Lone Ranger. And what you don't know is that he was built on a real man. Bass Reeves, a Black US Marshal who worked the American frontier in the 1870s. The white horse named Silver, the Silver Bullets, the Black Mask, the Native American Companion, the lone operator in Indian Territory, upholding the law where there was no law. You grew up with this. You have always assumed it was fiction. It was not entirely fiction. Every detail of that mythology, the silver, the horse, the mask, the territory, the lone operator who never revealed his face, maps onto a single real man. He was a formerly enslaved black lawman named Bass Reeves, the first black US deputy marshal west of the Mississippi River. He has been dead since 1910, and the people who built the Lone Ranger made sure you would never hear his name. That is not an accident, and by the end of this, you will know exactly who made that decision, when, and why. Parker County, Texas, 1838. A child is born into slavery on a cotton plantation. He is the legal property of Colonel George Reeves, and he will carry that man's surname for the rest of his life. A common practice that will make him, years later, harder to find in the historical record. His first name is Bass. He has no choice about any of this. For the first 23 years of his life, Bass Reeves is property. He does farm labor, domestic work, whatever Colonel Reeves requires. Enslaved people do not generate records. What we know is that he survived it, and that when the Civil War broke out in 1861, something changed. The documented accounts disagree on the precise trigger. Whether there was a confrontation, a fight, a specific night he decided to go. What the record confirms is this: Bass Reeves escaped. He fled north into Indian Territory, the vast, unmapped stretch of land that would become Oklahoma. And he did not come back for 4 years. He was 23 years old, alone, and a fugitive. In Indian Territory, Reeves lived among the Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole nations. He had no language when he arrived other than English. Think about what that means. A fugitive in unmapped territory, unable to communicate, entirely dependent on being accepted by people he had never met. By the time the war ended, he spoke 5 Native American languages. He learned them the way a man learns things when survival is the teacher, by immersion, by necessity, by the particular focus of someone who understands that being useful is what keeps you alive. He also taught himself to shoot. Accounts from the period describe him as one of the finest rifle and pistol marksmen in the territory. A large, physically imposing man, and possessed of one quality harder to teach than marksmanship: calm. He was calm in situations that would make most men reckless. He thought before he moved. He planned. He was patient in a way that would later make him the most effective federal officer in the history of the American frontier. When the war ended and Reconstruction began, Reeves returned to Arkansas as a free man. He farmed, he married, he had 10 children. He was not literate. The law that enslaved him had made sure of that. But he had a memory that the people around him described as extraordinary. He memorized things: passages, names, descriptions, warrants. He was building an instrument he did not yet have a name for. In 1875, Judge Isaac Parker was appointed to the federal bench in Fort Smith, Arkansas, the man history remembers as the hanging judge, tasked with bringing order to the Western District, which included all of Indian Territory. Parker needed deputies who could operate in that territory, who knew the land, who knew the people, who could survive alone across 75,000 square miles with no backup and no telegraph. There was one man who fit that description better than anyone alive. He appointed Bass Reeves as a deputy US Marshal. Reeves was 37 years old. He could not read a single word on his own warrants. He would serve in that role for 32 years. And what he built in those 32 years is one of the most documented and least known careers in the history of American law. In 32 years, Bass Reeves made over 3,000 arrests. He killed 14 men in the line of duty. Every death documented, every case reviewed, every ruling identical. Justified self-defense. He was never convicted of any wrongdoing. He never served a wrong warrant, not once. And that last detail is worth sitting with, because he could not read the warrants himself. Before every arrest, he had a deputy or court clerk read the warrant aloud. He memorized it. The exact names, the exact charges, the exact legal parameters. He never got one wrong. Could you hold all of that? A federal legal document word for word, before riding alone into unmapped country to serve it. Federal warrants specify legal language precisely. A wrong arrest in Indian Territory in the 1870s could start a violent confrontation across 3 counties. The tolerance for error was 0. He had 0 errors in 32 years. He used disguises routinely. He would dress as a farmer, a tramp, a cowboy, whatever allowed him to get close without triggering alarm. He scouted targets for days before moving. When he finally moved, it was decisive. His contemporaries found his patience almost unsettling. A man who could wait longer than the man he was hunting, and who never seemed to doubt that he would eventually find him. And he had a calling card, a silver dollar. When Bass Reeves approached a suspect in a situation where the man had a choice, he would set a silver dollar on the table or the ground between them. He explained what it meant. Take the dollar, and you surrender peacefully, and you face the judge, and you have a chance. Leave the dollar, and you have made a different choice. Most men took the dollar. The men who did not are the 14 names in the official record. The silver dollar. Remember that. He rode a grey horse. Contemporary accounts describe it variously as white or grey, depending on the light and the observer. A large, pale horse, recognizable from a distance. The kind of horse a lawman uses when he wants his arrival to carry a message before he speaks. The grey horse, remember that too. He operated alone. He had Native American companions, documented guides and colleagues from the Cherokee and Creek nations who assisted on specific assignments. He worked in Indian Territory. He was masked in a functional sense. A black man operating as a federal officer in post-Reconstruction America could not announce himself in every jurisdiction without risk. There were places where his badge was less protection than his disguise. Silver calling card, grey horse, lone operator in Indian Territory, Native American companions, masked identity. You are holding the picture already, aren't you? Hold it. We will get there. In 1902, an assignment arrived at the Marshal's office. The suspect had fled into Indian Territory and resisted 2 previous attempts at arrest. The charge was murder, the killing of his own wife. The assigned marshal was Bass Reeves. He already knew the suspect. The suspect was his son. Benny Reeves, 28 years old, had murdered his wife and disappeared into the territory his father knew better than anyone. Reeves accepted the assignment. He did not request reassignment. He did not ask anyone else to handle it. He tracked his son for weeks across 3 counties, located him, and arrested him without incident. He delivered Benny Reeves to court. Benny was convicted. He served his sentence. Bass Reeves never spoke about it publicly, not once. There is no record of what either man said at the moment of arrest. There is only the warrant, the delivery, and the conviction. That is who this man was. He died in January 1910 in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Cold ground, no ceremony. 71 years old, 32 years of service, over 3,000 arrests, 14 justified killings, 0 wrongful warrants. He died in poverty. The obituary in the local paper was 4 sentences. It noted his service. It did not linger. And that should be the end of the story. Except that 23 years later, someone reached back into the fading memory of this man and used him. In 1933, a radio station in Detroit called WXYZ began broadcasting a new serial. The writer was a man named Franz Stryker. The station owner was George Trendool. The character they created was a Texas Ranger who had survived a massacre, taken on a masked identity, and ridden out alone into Indian Territory to uphold justice. He rode a white horse named Silver. He used silver as his calling card, not a dollar, but a bullet, left at the scene of every resolved case as a signature. He had a Native American companion named Tonto. He operated alone. He never revealed his face. They called him the Lone Ranger. Stryker and Trendle were aware of the Bass Reeves legend. The Indian Territory setting, the Native American companion, the silver iconography, the lone operator methodology. These are not coincidences of genre. They are documented parallels. They took the grey horse and the silver calling card and the lone operator, and they made the man white, gave him a mask, and never said his name. The academic argument for Reeves as the primary inspiration is made in detail in Art Burton's 2006 biography, the first full-length scholarly treatment of Reeves's life, published 96 years after his death. 96 years. The Lone Ranger went on to become one of the most successful franchises in American entertainment history. Radio, television, film, merchandise. The character was white. The character was masked. The character's origins were fiction. The man the character was built on was a formerly enslaved black man who had made 3,000 arrests in the American West, who had memorized federal law because slavery had denied him the right to read it, who had arrested his own son rather than compromise his oath, and who died in 1910 in poverty in Oklahoma with a 4-sentence obituary and no marker that would survive the century. In 2012, the city of Fort Smith, Arkansas, erected a statue of Bass Reeves near the federal courthouse where he served under Judge Parker. It depicts him in full marshal's dress. A large man on horseback, calm, deliberate, exactly as the accounts described him. The statue is bronze. The horse is grey. If this story is new to you, find out next who stole a Confederate warship to free himself, and then won a seat in Congress. It is linked right there.